Well, good morning, everyone. A lot of familiar faces. You know, some are new. It's good to be around my people. You know, it's every day I go to these conferences, and gotta love the mold builders. You know, a lot of people at Z's, you know, karaoke last night, having a good time. But thank you again for wanting to listen to us chat today. So if you guys don't know me, I'm Baby Ray, or Colby Coombs. So I'm with Westminster Tool. You know, I come from a wealth management finance background, so unique, right? And it's you know, work with a family business. I grew up with mold building, you know, my whole life. It took me a little bit to realize what the hell my dad did. Once I realized it, interesting, fascinating. I caught the manufacturing bug, right? And what was really interesting is I got to, you know, meet Troy, and we're excited to share some information that hopefully you can take back to your businesses and run your manufacturing business in a way that cares about finances, right? And usually making jokes, the most hated person a lot. People don't like talking to me when you're talking metrics and financials. But then again, it's driving a business in a profitable way is very important, and hopefully that we can all add value in one way or another.
Nice to see everybody today. It's my second AMBA Annual Conference. I recognize some faces, but I'm still new to the industry. As Cody, I have a accounting and finance background as my technical background, but I've been working in manufacturing for 30 years. I spent 21 years with a company called AMBA American Corporation. It's a greenfield startup of a division of a Japanese publicly traded company. And we engineered and built, engineered to order product, stamping presses, primarily servicing the automotive business. So same thing that tool builders do, you know, they design equipment and they build equipment that has to perform. I left there in 2016. I wanted to move to the mountains. I moved to Colorado Springs and worked for a friend that owned a sub-$10 million manufacturing company. I never worked for a company that small. Found out this isn't so easy. I didn't have the resources that I was accustomed to, and it really opened my eyes up to what everybody in this room has to deal with in working in manufacturing in the U.S., especially on the smaller end of the scale. And that led me to want to try to help small businesses, small manufacturing businesses. So I gathered two partners and we formed a company called Beanstalk Collaborative Community Wealth. And our mission is very simple. We're acquiring small manufacturing businesses and want to keep these businesses in their community in perpetuity. And our first acquisition was Tolerance Tool in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a $4.5 million business. Fantastic business. We acquired it in September of 2021. So we've been operating it over a year now, and learned a lot from it. And hopefully we'll be able to share things that you all can relate to and that are helpful for you in running your businesses.
See, that Troy talked about this morning about connecting with people, right? And last year I was lucky enough to make the introduction to Troy. And as you know, I'm a little crazy. I thought he was pretty damn crazy himself because he bought a mold building shop, right? That's unique. Not a lot of people are running into the fires that we all deal with. And when I connected with him, it was really unique. And I think it's a different way to analyze and look at businesses. But so Troy, right? You went through your background in manufacturing, and then you acquired Tolerance Tool in 2021. You know, just to give the audience a thing, what were some of the initial challenges you faced and that you had to overcome?
Yeah, when we look at a business, you know, we go in and, you know, it has to have a very good management team in place, but we're looking for ways that we can support them and maybe, you know, people, you don't know what you don't know. And so we look for do a gap analysis, and when we bought Tolerance, you know, the first thing we noticed, and these are things that we did, countermeasures to address the gaps that were identified, you know, in management, operational systems, and sales and marketing. But what I want to concentrate on is really what we found in the order in which we found it. First thing is we took over a book of business, and I found that there were orders that we had that were losers, and the management team didn't understand they were losers. And then they said, well, things happened after we got the order, and I did some more analysis, and they said, no, they were losers when you took the order. And they didn't understand, there was a real disconnect of really trying to understand how they were pricing and what that was going to deliver. So that was the first thing we did, was we restructured the quoting and the accounting policies, which led to training the senior management on these concepts that we're going to discuss today on a high level. I was accused of trying to turn them into an accountant, and they really complained about that at the beginning. They said, look, you have to understand some basic things if you want to run this business. And now it's part of their DNA. The other thing that we identified is, I've never run a manufacturing business without a system, an MRP, ERP system. I don't know how to do it. I'm not smart enough to do it on that. So we did a search for that, and I hired an experienced accounting office manager that had done several implementations. We got her on board in January of 2022, within 3 months. And after we did that, we got the system implemented by July. We were go live on July 1st of 2022. And that gave us the infrastructure and the foundation to start really analyzing the business. So those were the key things that we did right away to address the gaps that we found.
So real quick, this is just introduction, guys, give you a little background. Like, finance and accounting is boring. People hate us usually, but we're all friends here. We're going to start going into some concepts and ideas that are easy. You don't need an MRP system. You don't need an ERP system. It's just a different way to look at financials, numbers, and making true decisions to help make your business sustainable and grow for a long time, right? With that being said, interject. You guys got a question or you think I'm crazy? Raise your hand. We'll go through a little open dialogue. But with that being said, I think something that was interesting when talking to Troy is he approached his revenue in a different way. Every single year we talk about the cycles in manufacturing, the ups and downs, the high points where the floodgates open and you don't know which way's up when everyone's working, and you have the low points where it's slow and then you're struggling to do anything. That's when we started our gun business at that point, right? But Troy, I want to walk through to the next slide real quick and open up, and if you could just explain the background. And again, this is a data center, guys. Sorry, we'll send it over to you, but it talks about the financials and the revenue. How did you go about it? And kind of walk through what this graph and your revenue base is.
What we noticed when we were doing the due diligence on Tolerance and other companies, you see this accordion effect where you see, like, also, there's a whole lot of business and a big backlog, and then it bleeds off, and then it sort of shrinks, and then it grows again. It's like it's doing this, and again we start to understand, why is this happening? Well, it's a small company, limited resources. We get to work, we go do the work. We go get to work, we go do the work. The problem with that is it's creating a lot of this ebb and flow in your manufacturing system. It's not good for efficiency and utilization of your resources. So what we did, and this is I chart a little bit, but what it's doing here is we came up with a booking plan and said, look, we want to get $330,000 of bookings a month, and every at the end of every week, it's like, where are we month to date on that and achieving that goal. And what it does is it focuses mainly our general manager to say, hey, if we're not getting these orders, you got to spend more time really focusing on those target customers and explaining what our capacity is, capacity loading, and telling them, trying to get that business to come in. Because it's extremely important, I think, for the whole organization, make sure you got a healthy backlog, and there's that impetus that everybody's got to be working hard, smart, and good quality. And they see it because they've got the back. I keep getting it wrong, but they've got the backlog that they see there's work behind, and they need to work hard and keep up with things.
and it's important that you have to keep this work going through, guys. And when Troy said it, I was like, how? And immediately I started talking to Hillary. I says, Hillary, we need more working nonstop, right? And why do you need work, right? As mold builders, we have the best, smartest, and brightest minds manufacturing these tools. We have an unbelievable industry, and our greatest assets that we have are our machines and our people, right? And when it's a slow point, we're not Kohl's, we're not Google. You can't just lay people off and bring them back in. No, we have bright minds, and we're investing them every single year. And we don't have that ability. And you know, you always hear say, oh, it's part of the cycle. Is no, we have to be talking to our customers. When we have capacity, we have to be working. Maybe internally the AMBA sharing capacity, because we need to make sure that we are utilizing our greatest assets, our greatest investments, our people, and those machines that are pretty damn expensive, right? But when they're going back with it, right, is what do we do, right? In manufacturing, our customers, why are they paying us? In the most simple terms ever, is our customers pay us to cut steel to a dimension with a tolerance that, when assembled in a crazy mechanical engineer designed way, produces a part that's repeatable. And these parts save lives. They keep airplanes in the air. They do all these things. Now, in order to do that, is we got to make sure that we are keeping the beast fed, right? We need constant work. Slow point, I understand, for PMs and improvements, but you need to have that level load. And as we talk about this, about the labor and machine, you know, on the next slide here, Troy is walking through, let's continue on about the revenue. We get the revenue in, we got to find it, we got to make sure we're feeding the beast. How are we looking at the labor and the machines?
Well, whether you work in the office or you work out on the floor, again, your work efficiency and quality is very tied to what's coming behind it. You know, that sense of urgency to get it done. You know, doing this, it really makes, you know, it makes you become very proactive in your sales efforts, proactive to keep pushing to get the right kind of sales in. Because if you do that, another very simple metric that we look at is, all right, I've got the work coming in, I've got my workforce. How am I utilizing my workforce? And I know you can't see this from the back very well, but we have two charts that we show everybody. The one on the right, it's just a very simple metric that says, I'm paying X amount of money out. How much of that money is going into jobs that's generating revenue? And the left side, it's showing like we're at 85% in March 2022 and 85.1 in March of 2023. So very consistent, we're looking for that. But that includes vacation, overtime, training, sick, you know, time off. The one I spend more time looking at is the one on the right side. This is the people that are there. They're there to work. How much of the time that when they're there are they working into a job? And it was 93% year-to-date 2022 and about 95% in 2023. I want to make sure that, I want to know that those people, when they're there, they're working on a job. Doesn't mean they're working productively on a job, but they're charging their time to a job, and you have to look at things like, are they working efficiently? What's the quality look like? But it's a metric that I can look very quickly. Are we spending too much time on activities that aren't creating revenue? So again, a very simple metric that you can look at and trend over time to say, are we effectively utilizing our resources, our fixed assets, our fixed costs to generate revenue?
Your chart on the right, are you factoring out your support staff that don't charge time to jobs?
This is direct labor. This is direct labor. It's not any indirect.
It's not an overall that includes the custodian.
And you'll see, I think we're very, well, you'll see later in the presentation, our people are very highly utilized. You know, we've got like CMMs all around the shop. Our guys, they're programming. You know, we do the design. Our guys they're running the machines. They're programming the machine tool within a parameter that's definitionally set by our engineering director, and they're programming the next tools that are coming. They're programming the CMM that's right there. They are our quality. They're programming the CMM to check the parts that they're making. And so they're always working on something. The machine's set up, they're working on something else. This is what drives a lot of the high utilization that we're getting. So, and that drives a very good performance on profitability for us, which I think is why I was asked to join this, because when Towers participated in the benchmarking, the business benchmarking, they came back and said, you're at the higher end of performance. What are you doing? And that's why we're here, so we can share that information.
So what type of work and stuff do you guys, I know you said you're a mold, injection mold maker.
Yep.
Like what, are you in like automotive, medical?
Yep.
Like type of thing, like what's fueling you guys?
You'll see, this is something that we look at we look at the industries that we're serving, so it's medical primarily and automotive. We do plastic injection molds and liquid silicone rubber molds, and then all the support, the follow-on support that comes from that, spares, repairs, and parts. Yes, sir.
I'm guessing this created quite a culture shift for the company?
Of transparency.
Okay.
You know, the former owners of Tolerance, they did a fantastic job of developing a management team. They knew that they wanted to exit the business at some point, and so they really got the management team up to speed, except for the gap areas where they didn't know what they didn't know, and that's where we've been able to help them. But it's a family-owned business. They held all the information very tight. The way we operate, we share that information. Everything that you're seeing, that's our employees see this every month at the all-hands meeting. As we close our books, we have our financials done 2 days after the end of the month, and then the next Tuesday of that week, everybody sees the numbers.
So going through it, the background is revenue, and you're looking at utilizing your people, and something at Westminster Tool is we track machine monitoring, right? Like shout out Roger within Focus. I see when my machines are on, when they're starting, right? And when we're looking at this, is we start with this because the next part we're going to get into, guys, is a different way of looking at financials that I strongly encourage everyone to at least attempt to adopt. You don't need an accounting background, you don't need an ERP system. This is very, very straightforward to look at the type of work you're bringing in. And I'll set a precedent before, and you talk about feeding the beast, right? We have fixed resources. We have great engineers, and I'm a little biased. I think that we have the best people in the country, but that's Westminster Tool. I'm lucky, right? But I have our engineers, and say Hillary's out there and she's bringing in sales. Some of you know that we are very, very bad at round work. If it's round, we're not too good at it, right? But when you look at that, is when we bring in that tool, we still have to use our, Keith or Seth for engineering resources to design and engineer an injection mold. But the challenge of that is once it's finished out, then I'm packaging up and I'm shipping out to our good friends at Illinois ProTurn to help us out at that time. Now what's happening is, even though we got that revenue on the top line, even though we still use our design resources, all of our amazing team members and highly skilled, they're not touching that until the very end. We're not using that machine, we're not using that labor, and we're still using that engineering resources. So I set that by going through is, when I was talking to Troy, I'm a finance geek, so Troy and I got along great immediately because we're sharing numbers, talking, everything, right? And he mentioned something that came out, and it started about value add, right? And when you go to the next slide here, we'll give a quick introduction for the visual. Yeah. And this is really the meat of the presentation, guys. This is it, is looking at your revenue and your business this way, because it's simple. It's not over the top. You don't need to have an actuary come put this together. This is a simple, straightforward way, and hopefully it'll get you to utilize the resources, your fixed assets, the best way possible to hopefully drive more profit.
Yeah, I mean, as we said before, you want to have a plan. You want to make sure you're getting work into your shop so that you can have the opportunity to utilize your resources well. But again, not all work is the same. Not all customers are the same. And so that's the next level down that you get into is where should you be spending, where should you be deploying those resources, what type of customers they are. And this gets back to how do you win business and the pricing. that how do you price product? When I first came into this industry, I had never heard of this concept of a shop rate. Using shop rates to determine the price. Totally disconnected from cost. It was like, well, this is what the shop rate, and all the surveys coming out put all your shop rates down. And I'm going, wow, this is really interesting. But this is the way it is, you know. I'm not going to change that. That's the way it is. But I was looking for ways that, well, how do I, if I'm going to price something on a shop rate, how do I know it's really, how it's going to affect, what am I going to get from this? And there's a couple ways you could look at this. You know, this is the traditional accounting way. This is, you know, everybody's heard of GAAP before, right? Generally accepted accounting principles, accrual-based accounting. This is where you've got, I know you can't see in the back, but you know, where a lot of people, the way they price, I know what my material now, I know what all my outside costs are, my material and outside processing. I put a small margin on that. And then I've got my direct labor, I've got my overhead. And if I want to make a 30% gross margin on this business, that's how I determine my price. And that's good, right? You can do that. So you've got your shop rate pricing. You can try to do this. If you've got the data and you've got the systems, you can also price, compare those two. But there's another way, and this actually, I read this in a Machine Metrics article that was published. And it was a source with Dr. Lisa Lang. They were promoting this velocity-based pricing, or what I call value-add pricing, where you're looking at what is my material and outside processing, and what margin do I want to get on that. So if you said that that's 30%, then I would have so let's say you sold something for $100, and it's $30 of outside processing and materials. That means it's 70 of what they call throughput margin or value add margin. And that margin is there to cover all your other costs. So it's a very simple pricing mechanism. You say, well, my outside processing material costs are 30%. If I divide those costs by 0.3, it'll tell you what the price is. And it's another pricing component or pricing methodology that you can look at compared to your shop rate or compared to a full cost, pricing using the gross profit targets as your pricing methodology. And that's what it's giving you, another tool to look at pricing, and not just by, for each order, but also for the type of work that you're doing, because it really depends on who the customer is, what industry it is, and what kind of work that you're doing. Is it a new mold, or is it repairs and spare parts? They all have different margin profiles.
So, Troy, when you go to the next slide, and we're going to introduce this graph, you look at the definition right there, but let's go simple terms. I can speak this language and I know it, right? When I go to Hillary and I say, Hillary, focus on work that's going to feed the beast, stuff that we can add value to. So what it's saying is those variable costs are, I have an injection mold that we're building. It's not in our capacity or best interest to make a tooling frame, So we have our friends at Vincent Tool. They make us a phenomenal tooling frame. Hot manifolds. We can't make those, so I'm buying that as well. These are all things right on the top line of the revenue we have no control over. These are all variable costs that we don't get to add value to. But when it comes to the end, if there's something that's out of our wheelhouse, plating or the round work, we don't have an opportunity to use our people and utilize our machines and our skilled workforce in order to build that revenue that our customers are evaluating us for. And when we look at this, Troy, if you want to just walk through, the basic definition and help explain this break-even analysis to really drive in that point.
Sure. So value add, it's highlighted in yellow here. Value add margin, sales less your cost of materials and outside processing. So that's really the margin that's left, that why our companies are in existence, because that's the revenue that we have to apply to cover all of our fixed costs, because all of our costs are really fixed. And I think everyone here knows what they're going to spend in a year on labor and overhead and what their SG&A costs are. And that's the amount of costs that you have to cover with this value add margin that you're driving from your customer base. And that's why it's important to understand what that value add margin is by the type of work you're doing and by customer. So what this, again, I know it's an eye chart for those in the back. What this line is here, this purple line, it represents, that's all those fixed costs. It is the labor, the overhead, and the SG&A costs. And then the red line is, well, I usually work X% overtime in a year. So if I have all these fixed costs, and then including my labor, and I run 10% overtime generally, then that becomes the nut that you gotta beat for the year. And then as you're getting business, the value add margin, sales less these costs, every time you're getting an order, you're getting closer and closer to approaching that break-even point, i.e. covering all those costs. Once you cover those, every order that you make from that point forward, that entire value add margin is dropping to the bottom line as profit. So that's why it's so important to be driving the orders in very consistently, as we showed in the first chart. You can't be doing the accordion, you know, because you're really digging yourself into a hole when you do that. So if you can keep constant work coming in, break through past the break-even point, then you can really leverage all those fixed costs that you have, and the better job you do of that, the more money you're going to make.
So a note on that, Troy, is you're looking at revenue. We're trying to present a way to have a different way to look, right? Looking at your business segments, looking at your customer bases, and ultimately making sure you're aligning with people that value whatever the hell you do, right? And you know, we talked on that, our labor, we can all agree we can't lay people off. We're not retail, we're not that. We have the best people, right? Our industry is fantastic what we do. We can't lay people off. Those are fixed costs, guys. People say that, hey, it's variable, some jobs take more hours, but we're saying, think about it as fixed. You're gonna have that payroll no matter what. There's gonna be some overtime here and there, but what's important to look at is which type of work are you bringing in, and do your customers value what you do, and does it complement your capabilities? And to give you an example, right, we build an injection mold. We use our design resource, we get everything. You know, and like I said, I can't build a tooling frame, and I can't build a hot runner, you know, I can't build all my end mills, but what I can do is I can assemble and I can cut those parts, and I can program the machines to make that into the tolerances and dimensions that are needed. But look on the backside, right? Spares and repairs and components. If I have that money coming in, say it's a $100,000 order, I just need to buy steel. Everything else we have full control over. This is a business that's feeding the beast right there. I now, even though that 100,000 is less than the 200,000 maybe for a tool, that is all value that we're working on that complements our capabilities and our resources and our investments.
And the engineering's already been done.
And engineering's been done.
Which is engineering is always the constraining resource in any engineering related firm. So wherever you can reuse and re-leverage that engineering, that's a good play.
And why we talk about this is looking at your sales team, looking at your resources, understanding your business, right? And you know, going back to that side, the value margin is if you land your work, right? So say, I'll give you two examples, guys. Say fixed cost, $1 million. That's my labor. Oh, Westminster, we had a lot more overhead than that, right? This is just easy numbers, right? $1 million, my fixed costs I have to cover. If I have a project that does 60% value added margin, there's a lot of things that I can't add value to. I'm gonna need to bring in $1.68 million of sales, because the 680 grand is for tooling frames, for everything else. But now if I focus on customers that are an 80% value added margin, I only need to bring in $1.25 million. You're focusing on healthy, sustainable business that complements your greatest resources.
And that's just to hit the break even.
Yes.
You want to be able to do that 1.6 million at the 80, because then now you've got profit dropping to the bottom line. And so when you have those fixed costs defined, and if you analyze your business and you understand what that value add margin is for the different types of business you do, be it new molds, be it repairs and spares, you understand what you have to do in sales then to at least even cover all those fixed costs, let alone above that to start generating the kind of return that you want for all those assets. Yes, sir.
So one question is, how do you connect the utilization matrix to the value? So are you looking at numbers like if it's underutilized, then you trim that fat and maybe outsource that activity? Because
I would say it almost the other way. Who here has ever done like, hey, should we do a make or buy now? Should we make it or take it to the outside? And you're using that sort of accounting cost method to determine it. You can get an answer that says, I should make that round work outside. I would say time out. Wait a minute. I'm only pushing work out because my costs are all fixed. I'm paying for those people. I paid for that equipment. I'm paying for the depreciation. I'm paying for the rent. I'm paying for the utilities. All that stuff is fixed. So I'm only pushing work out, even though I'm not the best at doing it. I'm only pushing that work out if everything is fully at capacity. It's with better type work that I can do better at. So yeah, I'll send the round work out because I don't have the people to do it. Because remember, even if it's only 60% value add margin because you're not as good at it, it's still 60% of that sales price is dropping to cover all these fixed costs. And that's where, if you look at accounting, it can lead you to make some bad decisions at times. If you're looking at just, hey, this is X, this is the make, this is the buy, it can lead you to make a bad decision because you got to be looking at what's my backlog, what's my capacity utilization, is this the right move to make at this time?
As another CPA in the room, I can say, you take it from it would be sound accounting, that left chart you had with all the red on was sound accounting, but think of it like, if I have $100 in fixed costs and I'm gonna sell 10 units, so I need to charge 10 per unit to break even.
Yep.
Well, what if 10 is not the right price, so you can only sell 9?
Yeah.
Do you then raise your price to $1.11 because I can only sell 9? Because then when I raise my price, I can only sell 8 of them, and all of a sudden it's just that, it's like your costs become, you have to really understand your business, where are your costs. And I guess my 2 cents would be, utilization is everything. I'm a CEO in a professional services business. I don't have machines to utilize.
Yep.
If I have 4 people on a Friday afternoon doing nothing, anything I can get them doing drops straight to the bottom line.
Yes.
Because so the focus on utilization is always the biggest piece.
It is. You've got to be driving in business, and hopefully you get to where you're driving in. You understand the kind of business you're trying to drive to get you a better. Assuming utilization stays constant, you get a higher value add margin, the more money is going to drop to the bottom line. And again, these are just things that if you're we're trying to provoke you into looking at these things and understanding these basic concepts. Understand how much cost do I have to cover over a year's time, and if it's this value add margin, how much sales revenue do you have to be driving in just to cover those costs? And then managing your sales force to don't get into the accordion thing like, we got a lot of work, go work, oh, no work, let's go back and try to get more orders to come in, because then you're really making it tough on everyone to perform. You want to try to be as level loaded as you can get, and so and we're small companies. Everybody's wearing many hats, and it makes you a lot more proactive versus reactive. Proactively, you're trying to work on the things you need to keep that level loading, keep your utilization high, and then keep sales, and this is the part we're going to talk about next. Where do you want to focus your sales efforts, and how do you determine that?
So, real note, yeah.
What's the graph showing? The gray line is like a perfect.
This line here?
Oh, the gray one, the angled one?
What it's showing is a representation. This represents all these fixed costs of your.
No, the gray one.
So this is
like your,
Yeah,
revenue
it's showing
flows.
month by month how your value. This represents your value add margin that you're getting over time. So you start at time 0, you get your first order the first month, and then as you start getting it, you eventually hit the point where I've covered all those fixed costs. And now all that value add margin here, it becomes your profit.
So that's on a year.
For the year.
So this is This is on, I think, a day, it's like 1 month. So what it's saying is your customer, we're not saying get away from GAAP, right? I think Whitfley would probably put me in a headlock and give me a swirly if I started saying that, right?
I would too.
What we're saying is, it's a different way to look by saying that customer, even though the round work, if I don't have any other work going on, I'd say, let's go put 3 people to go learn the lathe and try it. Because at that point, our customer is paying us for us to attempt to do round work. I'm not gonna outsource that out because we're going. So every single order you get, there's amount of value you can add in. So that is not the tooling frame, that is making the cavity stack, right? And what it's saying is, as long as you're having people in your equipment, you gotta keep those machines running, right? And you have to have your people working on jobs
You
directly.
can highly utilize working on jobs.
And what it's saying is, as you utilize, at one point, your customer is still paying for utilization. They're paying for your capacity usage, for your machines, for your skilled, and for everything that you have. And at one point, once you get enough utilization, you have an allocation base, right? You allocate overhead based on maybe direct labor hours, machine hours, all that. It gets to one point, once you get utilized enough, everything is covered. You have enough revenue in there to cover all. But I think what's important though is, Troy, when we go to the next slide, is really diving into this, because this is the concept, but on the backside is how can you use it in your business? And again, we have 1 hour. I could talk to a tree for 10 hours. There's other ways you can utilize this for break-even analysis. What are your sales goals? How do you manage overhead? We're just going to talk about really on the sales structure, because I think that's very important, because we're in a recession right now, guys, whether you want to say it or not. Debt's expensive. The government isn't helping us, and we got to make sure that we're taking on the right work that we're getting paid for, the right customers that value us and care for what we do. And when you go through, Troy, I mean, the initial break-even, you talk about tolerance, where you're at, right? And how you're analyzing kind of your customer base to talk to your sales team to lead these decisions.
Yeah, this is, oops, I hit the wrong button. This is Tolerance Tool. So we, as I said, we bought it in September of 2021. We got all the foundation in place by July 1st, 2022. This was our 2022 results, correct GAAP basis. I mean, we got everything dialed in. We did $4.5 million in sales. We had 16.44 full-time equivalents. That's everybody, SG&A, everyone. So these are just simple metrics that we're looking at that we don't have AMBA benchmark data because they don't have this data. We'd like for them to get this data so that we can eventually get there. So we're going to hopefully work with them to make that happen. But what this is telling me, value add per employee. A lot of people, they take sales, they divide it by the number of employees and say, hey, this is my sales per head. It's a good metric. It is a good metric, but I think a better one is value add per employee. And I think this inflationary time frame that we went through is a really good example. We looked at companies where their sales per head went up, but their value add per head went down. So what that tells me is they did not get all their price increases pushed through at the margin level that they had before. So yeah, their sales went up because of the material costs going up so much, but they didn't recover a margin on that material cost that was consistent with what they had received in the past. So our value add per employee is $236,000. Makes sense because our utilization per employee is also very, very high. Our value add percentage, and this is for the whole company, this is averaging of all the work that we do, 85.7%. So for every dollar in sales that we get, 85.7 cents is the value add margin that now, that's where the work starts. That starts covering all this investment that we have in material, excuse me, in labor, overhead, and SG&A. Our gross profit margin is 35.4%, which that's, I think, the number that got the attention of AMBA staff to say, would you put this on? It's a pretty strong gross profit margin. What it's saying is, and again, it's also a reflection of our utilization and efficiency, is that 85.7% that we're getting, we're holding on to a good chunk of it in gross profit margin by the time we finish the work. Our SG&A costs are high because we're doing a lot of infrastructure building there now. We're trying to develop business development strategies. 16, 17, we like to see that number between 8 and 12%. So, but it's high right now. But even with that, our EBITDA percentage, everybody know what EBITDA is? Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. It's a reflection of let's say the cash that you're generating from operations. But it's what's used, that a multiple is applied to it. It gives you an idea of the enterprise value of your company. And enterprise value less debt tells you what the valuation of your company is. So, Whiffley guys, that's not a bad EBITDA percentage, 26%. And these are after pushing through costs that we didn't have before in incentive bonus programs that the employees got to participate in. So these are the things that we're always going over with our management team. We're looking at another prospect right now, and since I don't have industry benchmark data, I've got tolerance. So I start looking at how those companies stack up against tolerance and looking for areas where we could go in and make improvements in those companies.
I think what's important, Troy's going to walk through how he did at Tolerance once he acquired them. But what's important to note here, guys, is we are focusing on customers and work that we can do and fits our wheelhouse. I'm beating a dead horse with it. If Hillary brings in round work, I'm going to be mad at her. Why? Because it's not feeding the equipment and the investments we already have. And the other note I wanted to say is, even though I love finance, and I love analysis paralysis, right? It's getting really in the weeds. This is simple. It's literally just your cost that you don't get that value to. You can track this to customers, you can track it to business segments, and from there you can make educated decisions to making sure that you're getting a return on investment just by utilizing your equipment and your investments that you made. And you have machine metrics, you have utilization. I can give you a bunch of KPIs to go through, but why do that when this is simple? And when we're in this industry right now, guys, it's grim. You're seeing places close. It is our responsibility as business owners and leaders to make sure that our businesses are here for life, right? Mold building is a fantastic, we've been talking about for a while. We're having all these challenges. If we don't run our business and make true financial decisions on the type of work and things that we're good at, people won't be around. And what we're trying to do, when I talk to Troy, him and I will geek out and talk for a while on different things to track. This is just the most basic, simple one that everyone can do. It's a simple metric, and when we go through the next slide, Troy's going to explain how he found it, right? And I'm working with Hillary now by saying, hey, it's not really the revenue goal, it's the utilization goal. So even though the spares and replacements don't go for that high revenue number, it is making sure that we're using our equipment, we're using our skilled labor, and making sure that we can hold on and maintain these people. And so the example Troy has when he bought Tolerance, when you go to the next slide, Troy, really walk it through. How did you do it? Yeah. And then we'll follow up with what was the outcome.
Well, Jonathan asked the question earlier, what all do you do? And we had to learn that. I didn't know what we did. But we use sort of the same approach. It doesn't matter what business is or what it's in. First thing I want to know is what industries are we serving? And this is really important also for things like industry concentration and customer concentration. We started Beanstalk right when COVID hit, which was a terrible time to start the business at Beanstalk. But it was crazy. We were finding businesses that, on the surface, they looked like they were really well diversified. They were as machine shops that were servicing aerospace, and come to find out that the end user of all this was Boeing. They were they were like a tier 3 or tier 4, but everything was going into Boeing and servicing the Max, the 737 Max. And when when Boeing had their problems, these businesses disappeared. So it's extremely important, we believe, on the industry evaluation to really understand the industries you're serving and who's the ultimate end user customer of that product. And what we found at Tolerance was the key industry server: medical, automotive, personal safety. But really, did all the value add analysis and the margin analysis, we found that we had premium margins related to medical and automotive. So step one is, okay, that's where we need to focus our business development. Focus is on medical and automotive. We're doing well in those spaces. And then we looked at, okay, what are we really selling? And so we do injection mold, or excuse me, plastic injection molding and liquid silicone rubber. And it's about, you know, plastic is probably 2 times it is LSR, but the margin premiums of LSR to plastic is pretty significant. So that tells us, okay, we want to develop customers that have a need for LSR. We like the plastic, but we want to put new business development strategies trying to focus on LSR customers. And then the other thing I found was that, you know, new mold builds accounted for around 60% of our business. The other 40% was repairs and spares. And the margin profiles on those are crazy high compared to even the molds. So then, you take all this information and you boil it down, and what it's saying is, what does our ideal target customer look like? And who are we servicing that we're making the superior margins? They're OEMs or they're tier 1s that are doing everything for the OEM. So big tier 1s that are making med devices or whatever for those customers. So that's our target customer. And then what do they really value? What's that value proposition that they're paying us for? They're paying us to give them a tool that's extremely accurate, has real longevity, and because they value uptime so much, that we can send them repairs and spares and they can swap them out and the tool works flawlessly after they do that. They don't have to send the tool back and we have to hand fit it, rework it. It works and they run. And they pay for that. And that's why we handle all their spares and stuff. And so when you add it all together, it drives the kind of result that you saw in the previous slide. And so then now, as we can now talk to our sales and marketing folks and say, we want to find customers that have this kind of profile that value a new tool sale with all this follow-on support, because that's going to drive profitability, maximize and optimize our fixed costs to drive the most profitability to the bottom line.
So when I was talking to Troy guys, and it's something simple, and I would push everyone here to do it. It's not a crazy metric, you know, full-time equivalence or anything. Just go starting at 30,000 foot. Who are you? What do you make? And then break it off as, where is your revenue going? Are you making spares, components? Are you making fixtures, right? Are you making your own product lines? Start at the 30,000 and keep working down so you can have a clear picture of which business segments bring in value and utilize it. Which customers are bad. And you know, I think that's something that we're working on, is you have to be able to fire customers. If customers keep beating you down on price, but you have another one that values you and will pay a premium for what you do, focus on them and service them. And you also want to create a strategy of getting work in that complements what you do. And I would be ashamed if I had Hillary going through and bringing in work that we're bad at. We do a lot of, I hate to say it, nasty stuff no one usually else wants to do, right? Like, God, the things you have to work on are crazy, right? But if we got an automotive, right, we can't get our head out of splitting tents. If we had tolerance that opened up, we're going to have that same mentality. And when you see our automotive, we'll do every network consumer product, we are losing money. You're just putting in the trash can, right? But on the medical side, and these site tolerances, and even the spares and components, we have a great margin on it. So I'm telling Hillary, don't just go for the revenue number. Go for the value-added margin. Because what's happening is those spares and components, it doesn't have the same price tag as a mold does, but it complements everything we do. And it doesn't, I only have so many resources in design, right? So if we're busy in design, building tools, hey, how can we fill in this backside and make sure we're utilizing our labor and our equipment? And what I thought was interesting, though, was when we were talking to Troy, I think that one thing that made my jaw drop was Troy said the growth, right? And how his company got more profitable and became better. And this is all after he created a bonus structure, guys. So he paid his team members more. And he didn't invest into automation. He didn't buy equipment. He didn't hire a real expert. All he did was pay attention to his sales, and he educated his highest team members on analyzing it this way. And no, accounting is just saying pay attention to what people value on you. And the reason why I bring it up is this is free. This is something everyone can do. All it takes is your time and resource and creating a good strategy. And we have to make sure that we're working with people that value what we're doing, and we're utilizing our people, because it's we are facing with a lot of challenges. We might as well do it with people that pay us and value the premium that we can offer, and also values what we're able to do. So Troy, I mean, if we go back to the previous slide, you can talk about the growth that happened, but the precedence is this is free. All it is paying attention and educating your team to focus on these revenue streams and these business segments.
Yeah, when we acquired Tolerance, these numbers, they were still a strong performer. I mean, their value add percentage was around 80%. Gross margin was at 30, and their EBITDA margin was at 22. When we make an acquisition, we come in and we just look, and we watch, and then we get an infrastructure in place where we can understand the business they have, and then it's all about optimizing what they have. How do you better deploy those fixed costs to the customers that will give you more money to drive the result, and empower your people with enough information to understand so that they can make better decisions. And then where I'm sort of it's sort of a silent nudge all the time. They're having to say, where are bookings this past week? Where are bookings? Are we getting the bookings that we need? And if they're not coming, then I talk to the team and say, you need to redeploy what you're doing and really start working on these customers, because we can't let the backlog fall anymore. And that becomes the priority. So it's a lot of proactivity then to try to drive a better result.
Do you show this all to your employees also? I know you're showing the other
we show them everything down to the gross margin level. Our management sees everything. They're dry. They see everything. The employees every month, they see the utilization. They see they know what the plan is. We've got our order plan, our turnover plan, our gross margin, our utilization. That's the stuff that the incentive bonus programs are built around, on the performance on those things. 5 minutes? Okay. Other question?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So, looping back to the all your eggs in one basket concept. So how do you prioritize, or how do you strike a balance between not getting all your eggs into one basket because they're your highest profit center? You know what I mean? Because we feel like we've got like 5 different divisions, and so we feel like there's value in having all those divisions performing reasonably well. There's always one that's performing higher than the other.
So
from year to year,
yep.
It's maybe never even the same group. So is there a way that you guys, you know, when you talked about firing customers, there's a way that you decide, okay, our profit's not as high with this group, but they're in a completely different market sector. So we see, you know, we're going to apply value to them, so that when automotive drops down, or when, you know, medical drops down, or whatever, we're not, we've got stuck.
On medical, we've got further breakdowns between elective and non-elective. Because the COVID hit, elective stuff went to 0.
Yeah.
Right? So, but medical is really big, and there's a lot of delivery systems within medical. So we don't feel being we're probably 70% medical. So we don't feel being in that is a big risk, because we've got a good balance between big customer diversification,
Sure.
and the end use products are also looked at elective and non-elective.
Sure.
So that's how we balance it, because you know, and I'm sure other people in here do medical stuff. We've found that to be, it doesn't follow the normal economic cycles because it's medical. So we like that space.
So I think something bring up too is when you're looking at it, like I can beat on Hillary because she's not in here, so it's pretty easy for me. But like,
You're on video.
oh, I forgot. Yeah, Ed's got it right there. I'm gonna get kicked in the shins after this. But you look at the mantle machine, right? 3D printing, unbelievable technology. We're doing amazing things with it. But if Hillary has 100% of her time and she spends 50% of her time selling mantle machine, that machine runs by itself. You put in a program and it runs. That does not feed all of our other equipment. It doesn't utilize, that runs all autonomously. It doesn't utilize any of our labor. And we're still trying to find a way to better create a sales strategy that utilizes and complements our greatest investments. And while we're going through this, and again, it's a short time, but you know, I'm a Coombs, I could talk forever. If you guys have any questions with it, because what we're trying to do is, you know, coming from that, when I analyze like stocks, right, I look at Coca-Cola, when I pull up their 10K, I know their profits on their business segments and I know their growth, right? It's easy to know, you have it. What we're trying to say is, you don't need to be a financial expert, but in these crazy times, we can't be financing bad jobs. We need to be extremely surgical of how we spend our resources and our time, because we can't waste, we can't lose anymore, guys. We cannot. We have to be very focused. And what we're trying to do is with the AMBA, come together as a group so that we are making financial decisions. We don't need to be some wizard or accountant. I mean, Troy's got it, you know, but I'm learning from him a little bit. But is make these decisions that are healthy. That way we don't have those slow points. That way we're focusing on work that complements what we do and is value, and we're only dealing with customers that pay for what we want to offer. And you know, we have a fantastic, I'm very blessed for the company that my father and other people created, but now it's shifting and we want to become more of a financial driven company, and being analytical and decisive and intentional with how we spend all of our resources. That way we can continue to be the best employer in our community, still make great products, and keep Westminster Tool not just here now, but for generations to come. And how to do that, we gotta be smart and we can't lose. And how can you not lose is you have to mitigate and have a good plan and a strategy and educate your team so everyone's bought in to know how this is working. And so when you go through a lot of our contact information, we're running out of time. I could go for another few hours, but the only note is reach if you're interested. We only touched on the concept, guys. Implementing it and utilizing it. There are 100 different ways you can utilize these for other benchmarks. Let's get together. Let's get with Rachel. I wish she came back in, you know, on the note is we can add this to our benchmarking. When I went through the benchmarking, guys, and I saw that the gross margin was at 10% was the average, we'd all be out of business. It's the definitions and how we look at it. Why this is good is it's so simple and straightforward. There is no confusion. It is stuff that you don't do and what's left over for everything you can do. And at that point, you have the best chance of making profit. With that being said, thanks for listening to me blabble. Yeah.
Kurt, is it possible how you do your bonus thing? Like, is there a metric that you that you're?
Yeah, if we hit our numbers, we give anywhere between 10 and 15% of EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, into a bonus pool that gets divided among the employees.
Is that bit or EBITDA?
EBIT.
Okay.
Operating profit.
Yeah.
Is that annually or is that quarterly?
No, right now we're doing it annually. You know, walking before that would be a better way to do it. Keep them more engaged. It's getting good employee engagement, and that's what we want. And I know we're out of time. If there's a few business cards, if you might like a copy of this presentation, how would we accommodate you?
Anyone who's covered that presentation, that's something that you'll need to send.
Okay.
We're not sending those out this year.
Right.
So you want to switch to the last one, so our contact is up on the
Yep. Yeah, you can. Here's our email addresses here, Troy at Beanstalk. We got some cards up here too. And Colby, you're welcome to reach out to us, and we'll tell you what we know and help you. I hope you found this provocative. You know, I see a lot of small business companies like Tolerance was. They invested in automation. They were very good technically, but nobody sees the value of investing in this part of the business. And which just blows my mind. It'd be like going into a fight with one arm tied behind your back. you don't have good data, you don't know where you should be spending your efforts. You don't understand what customers are really driving the kind of results that you want. How do you know to go, are you going to go invest in a new machine and get more of that crappy type of business? If you don't have the data, you may do that. So this is what we're trying to provoke people to consider this and think about it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.